So good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the Advisory Committee on Arlington National Cemetery. I am the committee's designated federal officer. Present in person with me today are Mr. Tim Keating, the alternate designated federal officer, and Major Shannon Way, the Arlington National Cemetery strategic planner. This open committee meeting is pursuant to the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, codified in 10 U.S.C. 4723. The committee operates under the authority and provisions of the Federal Advisory Committee Act of 1972. Arlington National Cemetery is the agency that receives the benefit of the committee's advice and recommendations, and ANC provides the designated federal officer nominated by the executive director and appointed by the administrative assistant to the Secretary of the Army. ANC also provides administrative support to the committee. Once again, this meeting is open to the public. However, members of the public are not allowed to present questions from the floor or speak to any issue under discussion by the committee without the approval of the committee chairperson. Any member of the public was eligible to file a written statement or request to make verbal presentation to the committee in accordance with the published Federal Register notice as posted in the binder at the entrance to the meeting room. Mr. Chairman, we do have members of the public that have submitted something in writing. I will get copies of that for every member of the committee, and then if that topic comes up. Okay. The proceedings are being videotaped and recorded in written form as summarized minutes of the meeting. Both records of the meeting will be prepared and made available to the public on the ANC public website. Please give your attention to Mr. James Peak, the committee co-chairman.
Committee is now called to order, and I would ask the DFO to conduct the roll call, please.
For the record, the following members are in attendance. Secretary of the Army nominees, Mr. Gene Castanetti.
Here.
Mr. Russell Davis.
Here.
Ms. Deborah Fix.
Here.
Mr. James Peak, committee co-chair.
Here.
Secretary of the American Battle Monuments Commission nominee, Mr. Chet Edwards, and committee co-chair.
Here.
Secretary of the Veterans Administration nominee, Mr. Thomas Kelly.
Here.
The following, and Secretary of the Army nominee, Mr. Ronald Featherston.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, based on the committee members in attendance today, we have a quorum. At this time, the floor is yours for any opening comments to the committee.
First, thank you all for being here. We have a pretty busy agenda with a lot of updates today, and our engineer's here, so I think we ought to just go ahead and quickly get into it. Many of these things really talk about the importance of the history of this place and what it represents to the nation, so we appreciate that. Colonel Pelican, we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee members, please take note that the approved minutes are from the previous committee meeting on 24 January 2017 can be found in the strategic binders. Those are laying at the corners of the desks at the front of the table here. Mr. Chairman, as you noted, the first presentation is by Colonel Pelican, the Arlington National Cemetery engineer. It's unfinished business from the last meeting. He will present an update to the ANC on the compliance of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Morning. Glad to be here once again, gentlemen, ladies. And so the two briefings that I'm going to be doing, scheduled for an hour. Can't imagine that it's going to take an hour. But please ask all the questions you want. What I really hope to do is ensure that you are comfortable with this particular topic. It was a continuation of previous topic where we talked, last time I talked about ADA compliance. It was really in the context of the amphitheater, accessibility there. This is a much broader, looking across all of ANC, and I think the last time there was an update on this was about 2 years ago. You received a briefing on the study. So next slide, there's an actual study, or a copy of it here that I keep in my office, done in 2014 by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that was looking at ADA accessibility across the cemetery. Focused on engineering, but it wasn't all engineering, and I'll highlight some of those things because there are other ways that we can provide accessibility to those with disabilities, and so we need to consider the full breadth of those. What I've done here is provided you a chart kind of up front. So that was the 2014 study. When you look at that, there were about 39 recommended projects that came out of this study. They're tabularized in the back of it. And of course, those were kind of rough order of magnitude costs in the order of close to $6.2 million identified at that time to implement all of this. So a lot of small projects, curb cuts to have the right kind of access from a roadway up onto a sidewalk. A lot of those kind of things are not, small amounts, dollar amounts. So they didn't produce a large bill. So out of those 39, there were 14 of those that really weren't for engineering to do. Of those, or we just weren't going to do. So let me explain what that is. Several of those recommendations were actually on National Park Service land, so we can't spend funds there. But they're mostly all up around the Arlington House, the Lee Mansion up on the hill. There were some that had to do with our public affairs or our CIO from the kiosk. More information placed onto the kiosk, or information available up to the amphitheater with headsets for those who are hearing impaired or those who are visually impaired and using our ANC Explorer app. So those are non-engineering action. And then there were I think about 6 out of those 14 that were actually recommendations to install more sidewalks. And most of those recommendations were actually in areas where the road's closed to vehicular traffic. So we said, no, we're not doing that. Plus, we also know that we really have to carefully balance how we use the land here at ANC. And so every time we consider installing a sidewalk, we also have to look at what's the impact on the loss of internal space associated with that. So right now, the only real pedestrian sidewalk that we call a true sidewalk that runs along the roadway is down to Eisenhower. And that's a high traffic, north-south route that is used heavily by visitors here as they traverse down to some of the more recently interred or ongoing burial sites. Is that a question, sir? Then looking into the ones we're doing, there are 25 projects, about $5.6 million as you see there. We've done 13 of those 25, so about half of them, but only really less than a tenth of that total bill. We have programs to do in the coming years, another 9 of those. So what does that leave? Well, down here, the remaining, there's 3 left, and the majority of that money. That's because those are very significant projects that were suggested. One has to do with completely changing the grade of the JFK Memorial, the whole ring walkway up there. That's a significant undertaking and would adversely impact that historic feature. So we're not at the point where we're even thinking about doing that. We know that it's out there for future discussion, but that was $4.5 million of that was for that.
Can I just ask, so the impact of that on our visitors is what? I mean, how many visitors can't have the opportunity to visit, and those kinds? Do we have any of those kinds of metrics around what the outcome of this is going to be for?
We don't have that because there is a ability to get up there to view the eternal flame if you're in a wheelchair. What this is getting after is reducing the grade. There's some sections of that arc where we exceed the ADA maximum slope threshold, not unlike the ramp. There's an area of the ramp in front of the admin building that is steeper than what is within ADA compliance. So it's simply to add basically have this arc, and you're going to add another branch that shoots out and comes back to it so that they can take that longer route to get up there. A wheelchair can get up there. We don't have too many wheelchairs, motorized wheelchairs certainly can, but we're just not in that tight compliance.
Well, I guess what I'm looking at is, as you have your spectrum here, there's obviously it's good to be able to be compliant to the letter of the regulation. The issue is which are going to offer the best advantage to our visitors, because that's what we're trying to maximize. And I was just trying to get a sense of which would be the priority.
We'll look into a little bit more, because I would say we have very, very few visitors who would not be able to get up there because of that slope. The other reasons they can't, just
They can't get up, however, they cannot get up to view the actual grade locations. So the one step is getting up to the plaza area where the quote is.
Yeah.
And then there's another 4 steps up to the actual flame. So they can see the flame, but from that plaza area, you can't physically see the grade locations.
And
So it's that second level as well that's
I'm not
another
trying
issue.
to hone in on the details of this specific one. It's just more the general notion of what is compliant and where the biggest bang, or where do we see the biggest gaps for the people that are coming to Arlington to honor their own loved ones, or to, as in more importantly, maybe even the notion of, appreciating this whole notion of service to country and so forth. So just think it through. It's a different lens of looking at it than a compliance checklist.
I think, because we do have a history of calls that come in, queries,
Yeah,
complaints,
perfect.
whatever, we can do some research there and see if what areas typically come up in there. So, glad to do that. Any other questions on that? All right, next slide, please. All right, so what I'm going to do is walk through, and we can go whatever speed you want. Some of these have been done for even more than 2 years. So you may have seen them years ago in this thing. And this is right outside the building, right out here for where you have the little circle for handicap drop-off, where previously there wasn't a accessible curb. Now there's a mountable curb. You come up here and then you go up the ramps on either side of the building. Interestingly, though, a future project would be to, and we'll do it when we do a renovation of this phase 2, altering these handrails that are not at their height for being compliance. So next. Here at the master domain, you did not have an adequate pathway without stairs to get, if you're at the amphitheater, up to the master domain until you come up to the next slide. So we have added this ramp, so there's stairs going up. Now there's a ramp that comes up like this, zigzags, and comes up, and the master domain is over here.
Do you have any sense of how often that is used?
By those who need to use it, no, I would say that is often traversed by just pedestrians normally. This gets a bunch of stairs, and it's easier to walk up the ramp. And it's not that far versus if we didn't get to go to Millennium yesterday, but we built to get from the lower columbarium areas to the upper, built this long ramp. I don't think it's going to be used that much because they probably just go up the road farther than back. Back and forth, back.
I don't think we have the capability to count and to measure
We don't have
individual
anybody.
areas, to be able to, we could get a sense though.
This notion of smart cities is becoming a really exciting new venue for start thinking of the kinds of sensors that communities are using to understand, what goes on in the community and the traffic and all those kinds of things. It might be worth giving some thought to the smart cemetery of the future as we continue to want to lead the way.
Just to the south of the master domain, American War Memorial, where we added again. This is one of these simple curb cuts, ADA accessible ramp with the you always have to call it a rumble strip. Little dimples there that let you know you're on that.
What is that called?
I call it a rumble strip. But
Rumble
it's
strip,
not.
oh, okay.
There's,
It's in here.
actually, there's
It's non-slip, they're raised, bubbled.
yeah. And it's not like a one word, it's like this long phrase. So that's why I like rumble strip. Next slide. So this is right on the back side of this building. As you move from the admin building into this building, we used to have this nasty wood ramp to get up and down. We've now, not just here, but also in the sidewalk as you come down here and to cross the little bit of parking lot there, executive parking lot. that also wasn't in compliance, so that was another project that was done. So yeah, it's nice. And this gets used not just by staff, but it does get used by both families who come here for service and are coming over to the site, or just folks who are just visiting the cemetery. They're walking around, they inadvertently end up over at the admin building area, and they just kind of walk around the admin building, and the door is open during the day. They can get through it, and they'll just come through there. They can't get down to the lower level below. That's a secured access. But they can certainly get through that door. Excuse me, Mr. Next slide. We've got a bunch of parking. So this is the new parking lot that we opened last fall. The phase 1 of the queuing project, so the first of the 3 parking lots. We drove by that yesterday. Those were on the tour. We came down. This is Halsey. This is the Circle of King, and this is the admin building right there. So a bunch of ADA accessible parking there. And then in phase 2, which we just technically opened for use yesterday, is the lot that's over just to the side of the admin building, and that has additional ADA compliant parking there. So with shortest routes get into the admin building for those who are visiting for services or other reasons to get there.
Did that eventually have bushes along that? I noticed yesterday from the number of the grave sites nearby, you see just a long row of parked cars. Is there any effort to try to kind of block off a little bit of that view?
That's a good question. The design, it's not so much, not hedgerows, but there are a number of trees. You can see one here, and this, because of the angle of this, if you're looking more.
I saw the trees. They don't really, so you wouldn't consider a hedgerow? Okay. Why would that be?
Not from but it really wouldn't be the engineer, it's from the contractor, but our horticulturists, just as we've added things to the columbarium, the executive director and the superintendent have asked them to look at all these areas for as we move forward with our horticulture plan. The contract itself
Didn't have it, but we could.
But those are things we are looking at, not just here, but throughout other areas of the cemetery as
Yeah,
well.
because the long row of cars wasn't necessarily attractive to look at.
Screening is critical throughout.
Okay.
We talked about the kind of facility expansion, but really elsewhere, as Renee has just said. So how do you screen that off? Yeah, I should have prefaced my statement. The design contract, well, the design itself, and then being resolved. There are a lot of trees that we're trying to see those get established, and then come back with where do we have holes and gaps that we want to fill.
So I do commend I don't know if most of you noticed that, but the adding of the trees and bushes and flowers around the columbarium. I've never been a real fan of that particular columbarium, but the trees, bushes really did soften that massive wall. So congratulations on that.
And key to that is, and I will, so my least favorite project in the cemetery, the irrigation project, where you saw some of the work where they're doing and placing, that will help us sustain those areas. Because the biggest problem been in the past, you put these lovely areas around, for instance, the columbarium, and then they're not the watering process that it takes, manpower and intense. So the irrigation projects will help us sustain that, along with both of our transfer points, our heavily used transfer points, and things like that.
Congratulations on that. Thank you.
624 acres, only about 12 of those acres are irrigated. So, it's pretty amazing. Fortunately, we've come off a wet season, wetter than usual, and the cemetery is terrific right now because of that. It's hard. We do have folks that they drive around vehicles spraying water early in the morning all over the place, but it is really hard to keep the cemetery by August looking at chipped out shape when it's dry and we don't have very much irrigation.
Do we have access to gray water?
We do not here, sir. We currently do not have any plans in this area or access to it. Next slide. This was a long standing. I'm laughing because getting these new water fountains in that have this design, which ADA access is designed for a wheelchair down person to be able to access this lower one. and then walk around the side to access the taller one. It took over a year to get these installed, and I got ridiculed, from the day I got here, because they were already stub ups in the ground and had been there for months, and it was just a month ago, that they finally got done. Some contractual issues, Corps engineers working out, but they look great. These are top of the line, look very appropriate for the kind of field that we have here in the cemetery. And so we're happy to get those in. And I think one was pointed out on the south side of Patton, and that was, I believe, this one. One's on the way up the hill, and then you can see Tanner Amphitheater in the background on that one. So that's right there near, kind of between Tanner and where the tram parking is for supporting Arlington House. Next slide. So the tram, UAMK, and these access areas there. And again, these are projects in design. So we haven't done these. We talked about the ADA accessibility and amphitheater, and that's a project currently scheduled for FY19 award. So we're doing planning now with the actual construction. That's not an 18, that's a FY19 project. And that involves elevator, additional elevator use, ramps for accessibility from the outside as well. That's those projects. Next slide. And then I think I mentioned yesterday as the ramps at the admin building, handrails as well. And this is going to take some discussion. Although those are big Fred Flintstone-esque handrails, big clunky things, they are unique to that architecture and design and the quality of that design that the experts don't really want to see lost, but they certainly are not ADA compliant. You can't grasp them. There's no curvature for your hand to go into. So the question is, do you just place them, or do you have to modify them with some additional narrower handrail inside of that, which you have seen done in other facilities. I think I've done it myself on the deck once. So we'll work through that as part of the renovation of that building. We continue to modify our parking, and I've showed you examples of that. Next slide. And then some patchwork. If you've gone up by the tram stops right outside this building, going up the hill, you'll see that there are a lot of places where the ramps coming up are busted out significantly. And so that's part of was going to be fixed in the tram area renovation. That project was put on hold last summer as we looked at incorporating that into a larger area project, an area development plan for this building, that area, and parking lots. How do we use this space? That'll be rolled into that. I already mentioned the handrails here on this building.
Do the trams take wheelchairs? Are they set up that
Yes,
way?
yes, they do, sir.
The trams as well as
The buses, yep, everything part of that, as you recall, that's a concessions
Yeah, I was
contract.
gonna-
It was a requirement that they be able to accommodate. It's actually free for the person along with.
I just mentioned that, and I showed you some of these images last fall, maybe it was, when we talked and actually visited the amphitheater options. We were looking at ramps going around the outside to access the plaza area. This is this last thing back here. That's would be an interior elevator that moves folks through different elevations. I think in January I walked you through that schematic that showed access. One of the things pointed out here is it's actually to improve if you're going to view a ceremony, you have limited options, but even more so, there's room for maybe a wheelchair, but not a companion who's not wheelchair. So that's what we're talking about is being able to make sure that we have space, people in wheelchairs, people are traveling by themselves, so we have space to accommodate them and the rest of the party for that. Next slide.
So those are in their future. Are they designed and ready to go, or what?
Those are.
Okay, these are just conceptual at this point.
It's still in the works. Again, that's FY19 work. FY18 is interior renovations. That's really the lower level where the soldiers were living, and some of the fixtures in the bathrooms, trying to even ADA compliant bathroom on the lower level, and seeing if we can make that a little bit better. So that's what next fiscal year's work will be about. I showed one of the 3 projects that I listed as we just haven't made a decision on, one being JFK, and the other 2 were associated with access to President Taft's gravesite. There is no way to get to it. If you are in a wheelchair, you have to go up the stairs right here. Although we did just re-level all these stones and actually widened the area right up by it. So it's it's really nice, smooth, well done walkway there. But still, we have to look. And I know the recommendation is having these ramp kind of accesses over to north there. So, that was, I mean, that's a few $100,000 project. We just significant impact right there by the main thoroughfare, and figuring out when to do that.
What is the road there?
It's Chalet. It's actually, it's the road that will wrap up around to the amphitheater and the old Tanner Amphitheater, I should say, and the Arlington House.
As soon as you go through the gate,
It's just,
right through the gate, it's just right there on the left, kind of where the crosswalk is. Right back, crosswalk, sorry.
comes up from Crook Walk.
All right, so this is actually part of the area I was talking about for Kennedy. This is the arch around to the northeast of the Kennedy Circle, Eternal Flame being up this way. When you get up to a certain spot, the way they designed it is you have this area going out and it circles back. So that's how you would access the Eternal Flame without having to go upstairs currently. And they're recommending we do some other, actually the recommendation got into taking all the stone out, regrading the whole thing and doing it, which a lot of Americans consider this when you think about what are the 2 main things people come here to do. It's to go there and the Tomb of the Unknown. And perhaps 2 of the most significant, certainly top 10 of things to visit in DC, having grown up here. And so we talk about even pulling stones out of here. That's the project going on right now to try to roughen the finish of these stones, because when they are wet, they're very slick. We also have to close the site down when it's wet until it dries. And we're having a very difficult time finding a technology that will roughen that stone without damaging it. I'm not willing to pull those stones out. Very difficult to do without damaging them anyways. And it just, unfortunately, the stone is unique in that a lot of the flame treatment technology, you literally burn the top layer of the stone off and just crumbles away and it's rough. But with this stone, it's got some unique characteristics about it. It's not working well. It's getting a lot of chipping along the edges and the corners, busting pieces off, and you can end up with a finish that looks terrible. Rough, but looks terrible. So we've been having meetings all this week, last 2 weeks, trying to figure out how we're going to pursue other technologies. And we'll look into that. At some point, I'll probably report on it to you in the future, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find something that will do it. Or we'll get to the point where we're going to say, it's worth improving accessibility under wet conditions. There is another way around, or you just leave it alone and say, hey, this is a national treasure. It's not worth risk damage now. Excellent. So that was it by way of update on ADA accessibility here at ANC. Again, there's still about 9 projects that we have programmed for through the next couple of years. 3 projects, JFK and TAP, that we still have to make a decision on.
Just in terms of the tram, and I know we've contracted it, and we had briefings on that in the past. Is that working well? And it seems to me there was an alteration in their path and their trip and all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious, it goes a little bit to my to this ADA issue, and where does it, has it exposed areas where
Yes.
we might want to focus our attention because that's where people are going now?
So the benefit of it's a concessions contract
Right.
that's run by it's a non-appropriated fund contract, monitored, and so there's monies that come to the cemetery. We can repurpose those monies to improve the visitor experience. It now does go to other areas of the cemetery, not during interment hours.
Yeah.
We stay away from the Columbaria area, the 9/11 memorial. It stays away from those areas, but it does traverse down around Pershing's grave, areas where Section 34 of the cemetery, where many visitors never even really realized those areas of the cemetery were here. So it does take a lot of rerouting during the day based upon the funeral traffic and the funeral schedule, but it has broadened where the visitors, the visitor guild has learned of different places to take students. Students now walk down to Section 60, but it has done that. But on weekends, it does go throughout the entire cemetery to include. It will include passing the tomb of remembrance in the
People
future.
can get off and get on.
That's
and that kind of
correct,
stuff,
yeah.
right? So that's why I was kind of curious. Is it exposed any areas where
Yes.
maybe we have ADA problems that we hadn't surfaced before, or that we
I think
or have we looked at it?
I think the study covered the entire cemetery, and the water fountain down there was one area that we realized we needed.
The water fountain, typically, I would say in a nutshell, the areas that it's not going to are newer areas.
That are all
because
trade
they were
compliant.
built with some of the ADA requirements.
Good.
The
Other,
Millennium, for example, it's new, and it's got all kinds of all ADA features.
are there any questions on ADA or this presentation? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any record of, have there ever been any safety incidents amongst visitors?
So we do have frequently through the summer, winter months, we'll have falls, trips, spills, a lot of heat casualty related people. Some of our younger Americans come to the city from Montana or other states, and they get here and they're not conditioned in July, August for drinking enough water. So yes, we have, but we've had spills outside this building where somebody maybe trips on the steps, things like that.
But none around these specific areas?
The amphitheater is a very frequent, but all over the cemetery. JFK. I mean, there's anywhere we have individuals, large groups of people. Stairs, exactly.
Yeah.
Older.
But you don't have to be older. You watch kids, they run around and trip.
That's the one
Less
thing.
likely to have to report it though.
The one nice thing about, we call them the rumble strips, or the change in texture, kind of helps that an elderly person the change in terrain. It identifies now I'm going up or down. So
As we, sir.
I'm not sure who the gentleman was, but there was a veteran in a wheelchair that wrote a book about the wheelchair traveler. And he got sponsors to take him around the United States in a wheelchair, and he did a survey for those organizations. And I was just thinking maybe we should make a recommendation that we find a wheelchair traveler that would be willing to come into the cemetery and negotiate, or not negotiate, but try to approach every one of the memorials where the tourists would go and give you feedback in advance as, well, here are the areas we need for improvement. I can't think of the author, but the book is The Wheelchair Traveler.
You know, there is an organization out there, that's what they primarily do, see everything that you offer, because you're required by law to be wheelchair accessible. I seen that on TV where this guy was suing everybody. I mean, he had it down to a science to where, and keeping in mind, when you open for public, you got to be able to accommodate everybody.
The PVA has actually really good design engineers that know this stuff inside and out. We've got a lot of help from them at the VA, actually, for our VA facilities. So and in terms of trying to build a relationship with our VSOs, make sure they understand that we care about them, that they may be somebody that could do just what Gene's talking about.
In terms of first responders, when you, say for instance somebody was to fall and they need some medical assistance, is the first responder pretty quick to get on scene?
Yes, we have
Is it
immediate
Arlington
response.
County?
It's the Northern Virginia Cooperative Group, so the quickest available will become. So it's either from the Joint Base. There are paramedics on the fire trucks there, and then if they're not available, if they're on another call, then they'll be sent from another place in Arlington. But it's the routine response, just like the local community.
They're at this building
3-4 minutes.
this time of year, quickly and every couple of weeks. There was one here just the other day. You often have people, by the time they get back down here, they're overheated. It's very common. Back to the fix this question. I once looked into it, specific with the JFK in mind, and it used to be slips. There really aren't anymore there because we do actually close that section of it, that portion of it down where it becomes when it's really slick. So we prevent those from happening. Yesterday, when we were going out to get on the bus and exited the building, and we're walking around this side of it, there's a gentleman, there's some benches along the fence there and coming up, and there's a gentleman with a walker, and then one gentleman with a long cane sitting on the far side, and I smiled at him because that corner right there on the other side of the tree until within the last about a month ago was horrendous. The pavers were all up and down like this and all, and someone with a cane or on a walker would not have been over there safely. And so that was one thing that was identified, particularly knowing that we had all these folks now with our security, enhanced security, everyone being pushed toward this entryway. We wanted to make sure that that was fixed there and other places, but that was one area that really stood out. So I had to comment to them and smile inside, knowing that the engineers for once had done something that was really appreciated. So.
Okay. Absent further questions on the ADA stuff, we have the Ord Weitzel Gate update.
All right. So back to the tram. One of the areas that the tram does carry folks to is the northern quarter, maybe, landmass of the cemetery. Ord Weitzel kind of circumscribes that little kidney-shaped area up there. A lot of interior roads too. Some of the oldest portions of the cemetery, original part. So a lot of history in that area. Lodge 2 is there. The Ord Weitzel Gate that has a stop at it for the tram. Folks can get off there. They can exit that northern pedestrian gate there, or across North Marshall Drive to go visit the Marine Corps Memorial. Iwo Jima is also the Dutch or Netherlands Carillon there. They don't recommend seeing right now. It's in very poor condition, but told there's a contract that's going to fix it up. And then they can come right back in, get back on the tram sometime later, and continue visiting here and then exit through parking here. So that's a pretty commonly used route there for them. So one of the things we're doing there is I've been updated on previously, and but this will actually give you what the design is going to be now for this and for your comments. So next slide.
So the historic gates is really what we're discussing.
Getting to it. That's my introductory comments. So this is the area. I just should have had you flip ahead to the next slide faster. So this is my little kidney area that we talk about. This large area. You have the Millennium Project there on the west, and then you get Iwo Jima's up here and the Carolines there. So this area right here, this yellow blotch, is the Ord Weitzel Gate, which will be zoomed in later. It's in very close proximity to the original location of the Ord Weitzel Gate. And it was one of several gates that there used the old road north-south, cut through here, bring down about this footprint, and there. So you have the McClellan Gate that's still there. You had the Ord Weitzel Gate, which was right on Ord Weitzel, right about here. You had Sheridan Gate, which was right in this area, right over here. And there's another gate that was seen a picture of it down here. I just put the name, and I don't know if that's the one that's up now on the border with Joint Base Meyer. We're not really sure what happened with that one. But this one we don't know about. Sheridan, we're still doing the restoration of that stonework, and so that will be a subsequent installation, probably as part of the Millennium Project. That's what we're thinking of. Next slide. So now we're looking north is that direction. To your right, so this is the existing entryway, Ord Weitzel Gate. This is Ord Weitzel Road, circles around. Millennium's up here now. This is the Custis Walk. So this, so about this point right here is actually the line for the old roadway. It just came down this way, came through here, cut right across where Memorial Ave is. It's before the existence of Eisenhower, and cut across, and then came down. And there's McClellan Gate that came right in front of McClellan Gate, right up there. So that's up until, I want to say the 70s, early 70s. I've seen images that still showed that roadway there. So now this is a pedestrian walkway, and it goes from this gate, or across the street from this gate, all the way up to Arlington House. And heavily trafficked area, particularly when you get up here. Folks use that to get past JFK and then continue up to Arlington House up there. And I'll show you some future slides, some pictures of parts of it are asphalt, parts of it are these kind of concrete 2x4 pavers, or I think maybe it's concrete that's stamped, like other pavers. From about here up is pavers, and down here is asphalt. And it's important to us because we'll talk about why, what we want to incorporate into the design. Right here is the original, about the original location. So this is a matter of 100 feet maybe from where we're proposing to put it. Next slide. I think you've seen all this before. The original Ward Park column that formed Ord Weitzel, and the other four form the Sheridan Gate that's currently being reconstructed. We found them. This is the area where we're working on the south side, off of Patton Drive. Next slide. Got them restored. So last fall we had our design charrette in early October, and where we looked at going into that charrette, the thought was that we had these magnificent columns, so we place them on the existing pedestals that were there. This is the vehicular access of Ord Weitzel. These are actual photos. The pedestrian gate right next to it, and you can see right here the distance, which is across Ord Weitzel Road inside the cemetery. That's because of this walk that continues down the route to the south. So that was the thought. But once we got into the discussions, and also with the CFA, but also our own cultural resource manager, they looked at placement of these and the distance. We had some concerns. One, you lost the effect of that those columns were designed to inspire, which is an entryway. For their height, they're now at this point too far apart. There's only two singular piers as opposed to one representing one unit as an entryway. We're also concerned that we're going to have the foundation below these was not going to be significant enough to be able to hold that, so we're going to have to do something there. There's concern about trucks. They have other things here, and if you get one of these things, it can be pretty devastating, not just for that, but for whatever. These are massive stone pieces. So next slide. So based on that, this was the historic width here, and so we decided that we wanted to try to get back to closer approximate that historic width. So we thought, well, maybe we'll put them on the pedestrian side of the entryway versus the vehicular side. But then that was also problematic because it's so close to the vehicular side, it still might not be safe if a vehicle loses control and hits that. It also, now you're competing. You have this historic entryway competing with a vehicular entryway right next to it. Didn't really like that. Next slide. So we went back to the drawing board and came up with the idea, well, how about if we put it, and then the other thing is, if you look at those previous pictures, that was the literal entryway into the cemetery, and you could see there were headstones behind it. You knew you were entering the cemetery. We went through. There was a wall on the other side, and you went. So we thought, well, maybe if we put them right in line with the start of Custis Walk, that is like you're getting into the cemetery. So you've already would have cleared this access, which oh, by the way, is now encumbered by some type of screening requirement too. So we have people there that screen pedestrians coming in, or check badges for the vehicles coming in. So you get through all of that, and then you see it. So the idea that everyone started to like was putting them back in view. Next slide. So we looked at that and started sketching out some designs. So this is looking from above. This is that North Marshall up here being Carolina. So we come into the existing gate, which is right here for vehicles, pedestrian here, placing them back here, recessed far enough so they're not going to get hit by something, and allow them to be their own standalone prominent feature. We looked at kind of these considerations. Talked to the CFA out here for something else, and was able to drive them by there and pull them in here and kind of lay out for them why we thought this was the best location. We were concerned we were going to get some pushback, but and this was the full committee folks, and they loved the idea. Really, it's close to where it previously was. It protects it. It makes it a standalone. It's associated with the cemetery burials themselves, right behind it, and so they really like that as opposed to greenhouse. Next slide. So we continue to flesh this design out. We had various points of input. We wanted to ensure that the tram isn't stopping over here and then competing with it. And so we're going to actually probably widen the road right up here, make it stop on this side, build an area for our screening. Next slide. It's in there. Yeah, so you can see kind of a sketch of, you'll have a little screening shelter with an area for people to go underneath if they have to have their bags checked quickly off to the side. And the idea is that even standing outside on the corner from some of those early photographs, you'd be able to see all the way through. See through past the pedestrian part and have this continuous walkway into the cemetery. Have these headstones. Talked about putting up just a partial wall on either side so it kind of replicates the previous feel of that and kind of demarcating like you're entering into the cemetery, at least visually. And then I talked about the material on the walkway. And road is asphalt. And I said, listen, it needs to be something that stands out. So we went back to what we have on the majority of the Custis Walk, which is these concrete pavers. We said, let's apply them here. And then the question said, well, how far do they go? Because this currently is asphalt as well. And we determined there's a bench area right back in here, it's about 150, 200 feet past Ord Weitzel. There's a little bend, there's a bench area. So let's get it to there. It's kind of a pseudo invisibility line. You can see a little bit past that, but not much. So if we do it to there, probably at some point in the future, we'll end up finishing the whole thing out. So it's light material, but that's future project. So this does gives you that visual entryway into the cemetery. It's I think it's very supportive of having emphasizing the classic feature of the original Ord Weitzel Gate. Puts this over to the side, and there'll be the tram will be over on this side of this on the roadway. We'll put some benches over there too, which you'll see in the future slide. Next. Not sure why this slide, how this slide got in here, but constructing. So one of the things we do have to look at carefully is make sure we have the right foundation. I know why. So the discussion now, one of the discussions with CFA is what do we use for the base material? The stone work. The original was this gray Carter Rock stone. We could do that, but if you go previous slide, if you go back, this is all the red Seneca stone. This is not gray, so you have competing colors. So suggestion, I said, listen, we harvested some of this stone from the Millennium Project. Why don't we just use that? And you can get similar stone still today. Why don't we just use that here so that it kind of matches anyways? Previously, I thought was we're going to put them on these existing pedestals, and that's the same color. Seneca stone. So why don't we just do that? Yes, it's not historically accurate, but it's not the exact same gate either. And we're not trying to do that. So I think that's what we're going to do, and we're probably going to be able to color coordinate the lower half of the shelter so that it's a similar kind of stone in the lower half, and it's a beautiful color. So that's the point of this discussion.
What is the the wall there on the right? What?
This, they were just showing, this is an existing wall somewhere in the
Oh,
cemetery.
okay.
And they were showing some of the features.
Got it, okay.
As a potential design. This is the actual original design. You see here, you have about 16 feet on center of this column, center of this, which ends up being 12 feet between the two. So that's pretty narrow walkway. Next slide. Here's the shelters I talked about. So CFA, we already presented this to them. They kind of liked it, this more subdued type of roof line, and this kind of a stone, that reddish stone down there. That, the slide, and then this gets into the visualization. This is current asphalt. So the benches are way back in here. So we use these kind of pavers all the way from out there, from all the way outside, well, pedestrian entrance all the way out, including across the road. So we have those in the road, so it really mark it, make it very, very clear. For the screening area and even the tram stop, which will be over here, it'll be different. Maybe the same material, but if it's color or something, they said, we really need to make sure it stands out. Next.
Can I just ask a question on, in terms of the area where the trams, are there grave sites on the other side of that?
So there are, there's enough to get part of it, but without interfering with those, if that's what you meant. There's nothing north of it. Let's see if we have, I don't think I have a map coming up.
Not going to encroach on.
Yeah, we'll see in the next slide after this.
Okay.
So this is kind of the standard Victor Stanley bench that we've been implementing everywhere. So we were looking at installing some of those. Probably put in the water point 2 as we look at the heat casualties and all. Not from relying on the Park Service to provide water to folks who are coming and going in and out of that gate. And water bottle, these are one of the things that are important to me, that we start to look at more of these here, because I'm seeing them used more and more. And that's what people, summer months really need to be carrying water with them. It's not enough just to come over here and get a drink when it's 95 degrees outside and you're out walking around for 2 hours. You need to be carrying water with you. The ability to refill those bottles is important. You got to remember, a lot of people that are coming here for a few hours really are visitors. They're walking around DC all day long. So to the extent that we can keep them refilled and hydrated on water will help them through their entire visit. And we got there's new trash cans coming in. So we have kind of a standard for benches and trash cans now. New trash cans that really allow.
That's one of the new ones, or?
That is one of the, some that are open from the side, trash for removal of the bag, and some that the top comes off.
Can you do the bags where they're a little nicer looking?
Yes, sure.
That's,
Technically, they're supposed to be tied, sir, kind of like you would neatly tie it around a, yeah, so.
And I'm not going to profess to be an expert on the trash cans.
me neither. Me neither.
I will make sure Mr. Moore's team's aware of the,
But I've seen some where the bag, there's actually an interior liner.
Correct.
Bags in there, so you can't see it out here. It should be inside of this, outside of this interior liner.
Yeah.
Next slide. So this is, again, kind of looking a little closer. Here's the design coming in. The question that you had, sir. The closest one, there are a few here. There's none up here. And there are these 2 right here, and then you have 3 rows. So this isn't really a good drawing because it's not how it would be. One, some of these trams can be a lot more than 3 cars long. So it would be a gentler cut back like this, and they will stick out into the road. There's just no way around that. There's not enough space on either side of the intersection to have a full 4-car, and frankly, I don't even know full train cars. That's okay. We know that there's a couple trees. There's an existing tree. We're probably going to lose 2 trees, and even our horticulture folks are comfortable with that. One of them is in bad shape anyways. In order to implement this, there's a nice tree. We'll have shade trees. I think these are trees that are going to go away. Maybe those 4 total, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're adding trees and bushes. If we don't, this will stay grass. We're not going to pave in front of this. Again, we don't want anything to detract from the look. Another reason why we don't want the tram stopping here, because you find everywhere a tram stops, the grass dies. Well, people get off, trample it, and every few months we're replacing the sod. So I'm sure we're going to pave this area here to make the tram work going counterclockwise. Currently, they actually tend to go more. So it's that reverse direction. That's right here, this shows, this is the bench there, and this kind of shows the extent of where we're putting the pavers. From there, it'll be concrete, so the asphalt up until it runs into Ord Weitzel Drive, right before you get to the intersection close to that. Transitions again to. So I'll leave this up, but I think I'll have after this discussion.
I have a question on, you mentioned about the grass dying in heavily used areas, and I went to Normandy, and the Battle Monuments guys were showing me that some of the techniques that they used, because they had several grave sites that were really, really heavily trafficked where the rest weren't, and they had trays that they would put in their grass that, you know, was special. They could take it out and put it in, and it looked like it was always fresh grass that way. And I don't know if that's something to investigate. They had some special turf that had, as I recall, some like pieces of rubber in it from it that made the ground more resilient and so forth. So I don't know. There may be, if we have areas that we have a problem like that, I don't know how we're addressing it.
Well, that's a good thought. I'm also thinking just the project that's been going on the mall for a long time, which is a very substantial engineering project. That does get a lot of foot traffic. It's used for sports activities all the
Right.
time. So they built this very engineered turf structure there with subsurface water collection stuff, all kinds of things. So we can look at that. What we've often done is we'll just keep replacing the turf and say, okay, let's pave it. We can go to semi-permeable pavers as well, but we can look at some of these options.
The executive director and the superintendent will be engaging the American Battle Monuments Commission staff later this month, so put that on the list.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you very much. Good job.
Or do you want?
Why don't we take a 15-minute break? We have a little time. I think we can do that.
Please be back in your seats at 10:45.